Welcome back to the Overdrive Show. This is your host, DJ Ginger, and today we have Rob DePalo, who is the producer and writer behind a new movie called Tapestry. So, welcome, Rob, to our show.
Thanks for having me, Ginger.
I'm so glad to hear kind of a New York, New Jersey kind of accent on my show because we air in Georgia, so they're used to hearing my Michigan accent, but it's good to have a little bit more accents on our show.
Actually, I got both for you. I spent about half of my life in New York and the second half in New Jersey, so I guess I got a little hybrid accent.
Yeah, I can tell. It's not quite full on New York, and not full on Jersey. So you definitely have some cool people in this movie. One of which I get recognized for all the time. Every time I say my name is Ginger, it's like, oh, and Ginger and Gilligan's Island. So when I saw literally Ginger from Gilligan's Island was in it, I was like, oh my goodness, it's like I haven't heard of her except for when people ask me if that's what my name is from, and it's not, but
Right.
but still, you have Stephen Baldwin and of course Burt Young from Rocky, but he was also in other movies that he's a very endearing character. So you've got some stellar actors. So I know there's a very interesting backstory as to how this came about. So kind of tell our listeners, where did the movie come from and what made you go ahead and put this into film?
Well, I've worked in the financial services industry my whole life, so I'm not a writer by trade. When I went to college, I wanted to be a journalist, and it got out, and there was a struggle to get jobs, and I wound up getting into banking. But I always stayed to writing. I always wrote short stories and poetry and different types of treatments. And over the years, I attempted to see if I could get some things published in terms of book form or maybe ideas for scripts and things like that. And it just never really happened. But about 7, 8 years ago, I was having some difficulties in my own life, which had sort of stemmed from the fact that after having worked for a company for about 25 years, I was put in a position where I was told my services were no longer needed. And the only way I would be able to sort of stay on with the company would be in a very reduced capacity. So it was a very humbling time for me. I was very kind of bitter, depressed, having to sort of go backwards in time to a position that I felt I had sort of graduated from many years prior. I was working in Brooklyn, New York, and really loving what I was doing there. Everything was great, and just one day, suddenly my world changed as far as work goes, and I had to sort of regroup. And I was sent back to work in Manhattan, and like I said, I was very upset about the way I had gotten treated at the job. But at the same time, there seemed to be a lot of other things starting to spiral out of control. My kids were getting to that point where they were getting older. My oldest son was going to college. The kids didn't, need dad quite as much as they once needed him. My marriage was going through some trials at that point. My mother was sick in the hospital, so it really just felt like everything was kind of happening at once. And I wrote about it. I wrote about the things that were going on, and I didn't have any specific game plan. It wasn't like I was thinking this was going to be a movie or anything. I guess it was a little bit of self-therapy to sort of put some of these things down on paper. And I started reflecting not only on what was happening to me, but also my life in general, my relationships with my parents, my relationship with my brother, how things were with me and my kids and my wife. So I really sort of took inventory of myself, and the story Tapestry was born.
And so did you partner with someone, or did you write the screenplay yourself?
What had happened was when I went back to work in Manhattan, I had met a gentleman by the name of Michael Iacovone, who is one of the producers on the film. And it's interesting that I've mentioned this because of sort of like the serendipity here that I really did not want to go back to work in Manhattan. I was very happy in my position in Brooklyn, but had I not gone back to Manhattan, this film would have never happened. I wouldn't have met Mike. So there was starting to become a feeling that things were starting to line up for a reason, and ultimately, it came to my understanding that God was a piece of this tapestry. That God was orchestrating certain things to make me be in the right place for this movie to happen. After meeting Michael and discussing the story with him, after he had told me that he was involved in a film project with a gentleman by the name of Ken Kushner, who's the director and producer on Tapestry. So myself and Michael went to talk to Ken about my Tapestry story, which was at the time only about 25 pages long. But it had a beginning and an end. It had all the elements. It just was not in script form. To your point,
Right.
After chatting with Ken and Ken liking the project and feeling that this had the makings of a film, myself and Ken, and we brought in another individual, sort of like a ghostwriter, if you would, and we took my story and we fleshed it out into like a 100-page screenplay. So I was part of the process, but like I said, Ken was a big part of it as well, and we got input from a few other individuals. So it was a collaborative effort.
And what was your reasoning behind getting like Stephen Baldwin to play the main character?
Well, initially, the movie was going to be ultra low budget. I was investing in the film myself. I was the one and only investor when we first started putting the film together, and we weren't looking at any heavy costs for actors. We were looking at doing this film with pretty much of an unknown cast.
Yeah.
And a lot of times these actors, would work relatively inexpensively. In some cases, they wouldn't be paid. They were looking just to further their careers and build their film resume.
Right.
So we started casting the film with all unknown actors. But what had happened to our good luck and hopefully the hand of God was that somebody that was involved in our project knew somebody that knew Stephen Baldwin and suggested that maybe we should try to approach him, knowing that Stephen was a born again Christian and that this would probably be a piece of material that he would be interested in. Our initial thought was, there's no way we're going to get Stephen Baldwin. We were a very small operation at this point, so we really did not feel that confident that somebody of his caliber would come aboard. But after a couple of attempts, we were able to get a hold of him, his agent, and present for him to either play a smaller role in the film or play the lead role. And he came back to us and said that he loved the story and he wanted to play the lead. Once Stephen came aboard, that changed the whole picture.
Yeah.
Suddenly we went from a cast of unknown actors to we had a film with a legitimate actor, and then suddenly people like Burt Young, people like Tina Louise, Joe D'Onofrio, there were other actors that people know very well. And now that they saw Stephen in the movie, there was a much bigger interest to be part of this film. And then, from there, we everything was just fell into place.
If you had to kind of explain what your hope was or your hope is for people who see the movie Tapestry, what was your mission that you hope people walk away from this film with?
Well, like I said, I was going through quite a bit at that time. I was coping with depression. I had a lot of doubts about myself. The things that were happening to me really brought me down, and I came out of it, with the grace of God, God on my shoulder. I guess I want two things. I want people that have problems in their life to feel like there's still hope for them. And I think that some of the feedback that we have gotten from people that have seen the film do touch on that. That no matter how bad things are, number one, God is there, but number two, there's always a way to get yourself out of that hole that seems like so deep. So I feel like we've accomplished our mission in terms of that, because I do feel the viewers of the movie get the kind of warm and fuzzy feeling that, hey, God's there. I mean, I know it's tough. Life could be very draining at times. There's things that are beyond our control. There's things that that happen you wish that wouldn't happen. The famous, people always ask, why do good things have to, or bad things have to happen to good people. I think all of us have felt that sentiment, and I did. And I want people to feel that it's not about that. No, they're not being punished for anything. Every single person on this earth is probably going to suffer some trials and tribulations or whatever, but stay the course. Believe in God, and you'll get through it.
Yeah, I heard a saying, I'm not sure, I know it's probably somebody I should know, but it said, that there is no greater death than the death of hope. And I think people, especially in our climate right now, you know, they're so easily discouraged because there's so much discouragement just in general, in social media and in politics and everything around us, that if they're having some difficulties on top of that, it does start to feel like, did God forget me? Is there any light at the end of the tunnel? Is there any hope for coming out of this ditch I feel like I'm in? And for people to see that hope and to see God move in a life, and especially to know that it was based on someone's actual struggles, even if it's not verbatim. I mean, you can't remember every conversation, you have to take some liberties, I know, but for it to be based on the fact that God really did bring somebody through these difficult things, and you're right. I like the tapestry because I've tried to explain to my kids at times and to other people as well. Like I said, it's like when you're putting together a puzzle, but you can't see the box. um, you don't get to cheat. You don't get to get even a glance at the box. So really, you're putting together the pieces, and it starts to look like something, but what looks like water, you might just think it's water, but then maybe the entire thing is a ship and a shark eating a ship or whatever. I mean, like, no matter what picture it is, God sees the entire picture. We see different puzzle pieces and we see them fitting together, and we get excited about it, and we can get excited about our little piece of the puzzle. But at the end, we have to trust that He knows what the box says. He knows exactly where every piece fits, and He knows what the entire picture looks like. And like in this, we see the threads, but we can't see the entire tapestry, which, if anybody, I've quilted many times, and even when I'm quilting, sometimes the ugliest things I've put together have been the prettiest quilts, but I couldn't see it. Even when I had the vision, I'm the one choosing the fabric, cutting it out in the shapes I am, but still, until it actually got put together, I didn't really think it was going to be as pretty as it ended up being. And as soon as I heard the word tapestry as the movie title, I had hoped it was going in the direction in which you really were going, and that is to show us that I think there's hope in the fact that we are there. And the thing is, the Bible says, um, that He's the common thread basically throughout the Bible, throughout our life, and there's definitely that hope that He is constantly, and even the way He talks about us, He knit us together in our mother's womb. I mean, we were a tiny tapestry in our mother's wombs. So the larger tapestry that we can't see, whether it's our life and just that piece of the tapestry, or it's the entire plan, we have to trust Him. And and didn't,
right.
watch him put those pieces together and interwove them. And it's funny how it, like, in the end, like, somewhere you literally went from this complete place of, like you were saying, depression and lack of hope and things kind of coming from different angles, not going well, and then now looking back, you can see how that fit together, even though at the time it felt like nothing was fitting, right?
Well, a lot of this story was autobiographical. I mean, there are things in there that are very specific events that have happened to me, but really, and especially in a certain time period when I was having these difficulties. But I wanted the film to end in such a way, and I hope it did, that, okay, the main character, that Baldwin plays, whose name is Ryan Goodwin, who I guess in some ways is me, that this character does come to some sort of an understanding or a feeling that, okay, God did this. God did this for me. But I also want the audience to feel like there's no possible way that character could know what God really did this for what reason. And because to your point, only God knows.
Yeah.
I think the character in his own mind says, well, okay, wow, God wanted me to feel better about life. God wanted me to write this movie, but that's his earthly feeling. But who knows? Maybe God has something extremely more complicated than something as simple as we perceive it to be. And so I think at the end of the film, he feels good about life, but he also doesn't have all the answers, the character. And I purposely didn't want him to have all the answers because
That's
it's almost
authentic.
exactly. It's inappropriate for anybody on earth to think that we have all the answers because God is the only one. We might have a few of the answers and we might have some theories, but we may be completely off base from what the ultimate plan of God is. But at least, and I think towards the end of the film, Baldwin does say something along the lines that he feels like he has a purpose. He doesn't know what it is specifically, but he feels like he has one. And I think that was a good way to kind of tie it up at the end.
Well, and so this movie is out now. So how can they access the film?
Okay, one of the ways would be to rent the film on Amazon Prime Video. DVD. There's also, we do have a DVD form where they could go to ChristianBookstore.com. Christian Cinema is another site, and also the distributor of the film is Bridgestone Multimedia Group. If you go to Bridgestone's site, not only will you find Tapestry, but you'll find several other Christian-oriented films. So and some mainstream films as well, but quite a bit of other titles besides Tapestry. Again, I would say Amazon is probably the place that we find most people seem to be going to right now because it's a relatively common stopping ground for people to rent movies. But throughout this year, we expect the film will probably be available in on other Christian sites as well as mainstream sites like iTunes and things of that nature. So more to come. But right now, Amazon and ChristianCinema.com would probably be a good starting point.
And if they want to learn more about the movie, what's the best place for them to go?
We have a Facebook site. It is called Tapestry Movie 2019. We're trying to put some photographs there, some behind the scenes things about some of the production crew, about the actors. There's links for a few different things on there. The site's been up since early January when the film came onto Amazon. So we're still developing the Facebook site, but I think if some of your listeners go there, they could like the page, and hopefully as more updates come, they'll be privy to them.
Okay, well, I'm really excited. I haven't actually seen the film, so I'm gonna definitely watch it today so I can because I read about the film and I didn't have a chance to rent it before we actually started talking. So I'm just glad that we were able to get this information out there, and I will definitely share the link. So if anybody wants to hear the full interview and they missed part of it, or they got in at the last end, or they didn't hear it at all, they'll be able to hear it. We'll tag your Facebook page and make it available to everybody to listen to in case they'd like to, again, hear more of the heart behind the film and how it came together. And so just thank you so much for being on our show. And I can't wait to share this film with our audience.
Ginger, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the film, and thanks for having me. God bless.